Where is Ji Soo now? A star paused between yesterday and tomorrow. Once, his name moved fast whispered in casting halls, printed in glossy spreads, stitched into scripts that promised long nights and longer dreams. Ji Soo was the kind of actor whose presence felt unfinished in the best way, like a sentence waiting for its final, perfect word. And then, just as the story seemed ready to soar, the page turned too quickly. The lights dimmed. The set went quiet. The question began to echo, where is Ji Soo now? To answer that, you don't begin with where he disappeared to. You begin with where he stood. There was a time when cameras loved him, when directors spoke of his gaze as if it could bend a scene, when fans believed his future was already written in gold ink. He carried the restless energy of youth, the kind that makes mistakes feel distant and consequences feel unreal. In dramas, he played boys on the edge, troubled, tender, intense. Off-screen, the world imagined more roles, bigger stages, longer arcs. Everything seemed aligned, everything seemed possible, everything seemed in motion. Then came the moment that stopped the motion. The news didn't arrive softly. It never does. It arrived like a sudden cut in editing, sharp, jarring, impossible to ignore. Allegations surfaced. Old stories clawed their way back into the present, and the internet did what it always does when silence meets speculation. Judgment moved faster than facts, and the distance between past and present collapsed into one burning spotlight. Ji Soo stepped out of the frame, and the industry, ruthless in its need to move on, kept rolling. Where was he then? He was nowhere and everywhere at once. In South Korea, disappearance doesn't always mean vanishing into thin air. Sometimes it means retreating into shadow. Ji Soo withdrew from projects, from public appearances, from the constant gaze that once defined him. Dramas re-edit, posters replaced, schedules erased his name like chalk washed away by rain. It was as if the story rewrote itself overnight, choosing a different protagonist, choosing a safer path. But away from the screens, life does not stop. It slows. It tightens. It asks harder questions. For Ji Soo, the years that followed were not filled with applause or red carpets. They were filled with silence, the kind that forces reflection, the kind that leaves no room to hide behind characters or scripts. He addressed the controversy, acknowledged wrongdoing, expressed remorse. To some, it was not enough. To others, it was a beginning. Redemption, after all, is not a single statement. It is a long, uneven road with no guaranteed destination. And then came the uniform. Military service in South Korea is often described as a pause, but for someone already paused by scandal, it became something else entirely, a reset without an audience. Ji Soo enlisted and entered a world where names don't matter as much as discipline, where fame dissolves into routine, where every day looks the same and ego has nowhere to perform. There were no fans waiting at the gates, no cameras tracking his departure. Just a man, his past, and a structure that demands endurance over talent. Inside that world, time moved differently. Days were counted not in headlines but in hours. Mistakes could not be edited out. Apologies could not be retweeted. Growth, if it happened, happened quietly. And perhaps that was the point. So where is Ji Soo now? Now, he exists in a space between memory and possibility. He is no longer the rising star everyone once watched, but he is not erased either. His name still surfaces, usually whispered, usually followed by debate. Some believe a second chance should never be given. Others believe a life should not be reduced to its worst chapters. The industry listens to both sides and waits. There are no grand comeback announcements, no dramatic teasers, no confident declarations of return. If there is a future for Ji Soo in entertainment, it will not arrive with fireworks. It will arrive cautiously, if at all, through smaller doors, quieter roles, and patient rebuilding. The era of instant stardom is over for him. The era of accountability has already begun. But stories, like people, are rarely linear. Behind closed doors, he is reportedly studying, reflecting, preparing not for fame, but for stability. Acting, for someone who once lived inside it, does not disappear from the blood. It waits. It reshapes itself. Whether that leads him back to the screen or into an entirely different life remains unanswered. And perhaps that uncertainty is the most honest part of his story. What makes Ji Soo's question so compelling is not curiosity, it is recognition. We have seen this arc before. A young star rises. A fall follows. The world demands a verdict, not a process. Yet real change does not happen on timelines designed for entertainment. It happens slowly, painfully, privately. And the public, impatient by nature, rarely waits long enough to see it through. So when people ask, where is Ji Soo now? The truest answer might be, in transition. He is in the space where past actions still speak louder than future intentions. In the place where silence is both punishment and protection. In a chapter not yet titled, not yet published, not yet approved by the audience that once adored him. Whether he returns or not, his story has already shifted the rhythm of his career forever. The innocence of early fame is gone. In its place is something heavier, something more fragile, something that cannot be faked on screen. If he ever acts again, he will do so with the weight of reality pressing into every line, every look, every pause. And maybe that is the quiet irony. The boy who once played troubled characters learned, too late, how real trouble feels. The actor who once borrowed pain for performance had to sit with his own. The star who once chased the spotlight learned what it means to live without it. So where is Ji Soo now? He is not on your screen. He is not in your feed. He is not where he used to be. He is somewhere between consequence and continuation, between the echo of who he was and the question of who he might still become. Before the silence, there was the rise. Before the headlines learned how to bruise a name, there was a different Ji Soo, one shaped by early mornings, borrowed scripts, and the quiet hunger of someone who knew the door could close at any moment. This was the season when everything still felt possible, when the future behaved like a promise instead of a warning. Picture the rehearsal rooms first. Bare floors, fluorescent lights, the smell of instant coffee clinging to the air. Ji Soo stood among other hopefuls, shoulders squared, eyes alert, listening harder than he spoke. He wasn't the loudest in the room. He didn't need to be. There was something in the way he absorbed direction, the way he adjusted with each take, like clay learning its own shape. Casting directors noticed not because he demanded attention, but because the camera found him anyway. Then came the small roles, the stepping stones that never look important until you've crossed them. A scene here, a line there. Characters who appeared briefly but left an impression, like passing trains that made the platform tremble. Each appearance sharpened him. Each project taught him timing, restraint, presence. This was not overnight fame. It was accumulation hours stacking into experience, rejection building resilience, yes, finally arriving after too many no's. On set, he learned the language of production, the hush before action, the exhale after cut, the silent communication between actor and lens. He watched seniors closely, studied how they carried themselves between takes, how they protected their energy. He learned that acting wasn't just emotion, it was endurance. Long nights, rewritten scenes, waiting hours for moments that lasted seconds on screen. And then, the roles grew larger. Ji Soo began playing characters who felt unfinished, young men walking the thin line between anger and vulnerability. Audiences recognized something familiar in him, a reflection of youth still figuring itself out. His gaze carried questions. His pauses carried weight. Viewers leaned in when he spoke, and leaned even closer when he didn't. It was that stillness that became his signature, that quiet intensity that made scenes feel intimate, almost confessional. With recognition came momentum. Interviews followed. Photo shoots. Fan comments multiplied, spelling his name with hearts and expectations. The industry loves a narrative, and his was shaping nicely. Promising actor, rising fast, destined for more. Scripts arrived with better billing. His schedule filled. His phone stopped being quiet. There were nights after filming where he stayed awake longer than necessary, replaying scenes in his head, wondering how to make the next one better. Fame hadn't yet hardened into routine. It still felt fragile, like glass that could shatter if handled carelessly. That fear drove him forward. It made him work harder, dig deeper, reach further. But success has a way of speeding up time. Days blurred. Responsibilities piled on. Applause grew louder, but so did the noise around it. Youth, when wrapped in attention, often believes it is invincible. The margin for error feels wide. The past feels distant. Lessons not yet learned wait patiently, knowing they will arrive eventually. Still, during this phase, this untouched chapter, Ji Soo was firmly inside the dream. He was living the version of his life many only imagine, scripts in hand, cameras ready, futures discussed in optimistic tones. Directors spoke of potential. Fans spoke of forever. The path ahead seemed clear, straight, illuminated. No one talks enough about how fragile that clarity is. One wrong step, one shadow from behind, one truth resurfacing at the wrong time, and the entire narrative can tilt. But in this moment, before the tilt, before the fracture, he stood tall inside his becoming. Not perfect, not complete, just rising. This is the part people forget when stories collapse into controversy, the human climb that came first. The effort, the learning, the hunger. The version of Ji Soo that existed before consequence rewrote the pace of his life. Because before the silence, there was sound. Before the pause, there was motion. Before the fall, there was flight. This was the chapter where his name was still being written forward, where the ending had not yet argued with the beginning, where the story was still climbing, unaware of how quickly it could descend.